The journey back to her homeworld took Lyra 3 Earth months, though. For her, it felt like mere days. Time moved differently in deep space travel. Her small ship glided through the darkness carrying precious cargo, not just the data and samples she had collected, but the memories and emotions she had experienced on Earth. As her ship approached the crystalline cities of Astria, Lyra felt a strange sensation in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it as anxiety, a feeling she had learned from humans before her visit to Earth. She would have simply reported her findings without concern for the consequences. But now she understood what was at stake. The landing bay opened for her ship, a sterile white chamber that seemed cold, after the vibrant colors of Earth. As she stepped out, members of the Science Council were waiting, their expressions unreadable. "You have made direct contact." High Observer Marin said, his voice flat. It was not a question, they had been monitoring her. "Have," Lyra replied, straightening her shoulders. "And I have found that our records of humans are incomplete. You have violated protocol," Marin continued. "You were to observe only." Lyra held his gaze. "I made a judgment call. The data suggested humans were more complex than our previous surveys indicated. Direct interaction was necessary for accurate assessment." This was not entirely true, but Lyra had learned another human trait: strategic omission of information. She needed to buy time to present her case properly. The Science Council chambers were vast and empty, a circular room with high ceilings where 12 Astrians sat in hovering chairs arranged in a perfect circle. Lyra stood in the center, feeling the weight of their collective gaze. "You will submit to memory extraction," Senior Observer Nala said, "the most efficient way to process your findings." "No," Lyra replied, causing a ripple of surprise through the council. "I request formal presentation. My findings involve nuance that direct extraction would miss." This was unprecedented. Astrians did not refuse council requests, but Lyra knew that memory extraction would flatten her experiences, reduce them to cold data. The council would see what happened, but not understand what it meant. They would not feel what she had felt. After brief silent communication among themselves, Marin nodded. "Very well. You have 1 cycle to prepare. Your presentation will be witnessed by both science and military councils." Lyra bowed slightly and left the chamber. Her quarters seemed smaller than she remembered, the minimalist design now striking her as empty rather than efficient. She placed her samples of human culture around the room: paintings, books, recordings of music. They looked out of place here, vibrant anomalies in a world of white and silver. She spent the cycle preparing, not just organizing her data, but thinking about how to make the councils understand what she had learned about humanity, how to explain the value of imperfection, the beauty in chaos, the strength found in vulnerability. These were concepts Astrians had long ago dismissed as evolutionary weaknesses. The joint council session was rare. The Science Council, 12 members in white, and the Military Council, 12 in black, sat in tiered seating facing Lyra. At the far end, on a raised platform, sat the 3 members of the High Council, who would make the final decision regarding Earth. Lyra began with the facts. The data on human technological development, population, genetics, resource management, all the things the councils would expect. But then she departed from standard procedure. "I would like to present additional findings," she said. "These concern aspects of human civilization not covered in our standard assessment protocols." Proceed, Counselor Vex of the military said, her black eyes narrowed. Lyra activated her sensory projector. "First, I offer this." She played a recording of a human orchestra, the notes filling the sterile chamber. Several council members shifted, uncomfortably. But Lyra did not stop the music. "This is created by humans not for any practical purpose but for what they call beauty," she explained as the music swelled. "It serves no survival function. Yet they dedicate significant resources to it." She showed them paintings next, then poetry, then dance, then recordings of human interactions. A mother comforting a child, friends laughing together, strangers helping one another after a storm, a couple holding hands at sunset. "These behaviors appear irrational by our standards," she continued. But they create connections between humans that strengthen their society in ways our models have not accounted for. The military council was growing impatient. Counselor Vex spoke. This is irrelevant to the assessment of threat level. Their son will destabilize regardless of their emotional behaviors. Lyra faced her directly. That is true. But it is relevant to whether we should intervene. The room went silent. This was the central question. The anomaly in Earth's sun had been detected by Astrian sensors decades ago. A relatively simple correction could prevent the catastrophe. But Astrian law was clear. Intervention was permitted only for species deemed valuable to universal balance. I submit that humans possess qualities our civilization has lost. Lyra said qualities we once valued. Creativity, emotion, connection. They are young, yes, and flawed. But they are evolving in directions we cannot predict, because they are not bound by pure efficiency. I have brought a proposal, she continued. If we save their world, we establish cultural exchange, a sharing of knowledge, their creativity for our technology, their emotion for our stability. Counselor Marin leaned forward. This would violate our containment protocols. Yes, Lyra acknowledged. But I believe the benefits outweigh the risks. She spent the next hour answering questions, defending her position, presenting evidence. Some council members were curious, others dismissive. The military council saw only potential threats. The science council saw research subjects. Neither fully grasped what Lyra was trying to convey. Finally, the High Council raised their hands for silence. We will deliberate. The elder said, Your proposal is unprecedented. We must consider all implications. Lyra bowed and left the chamber, her heart's beating rapidly. She had done all she could, now she could only wait. Days passed. Lyra found herself unable to follow her normal routines. Food had no taste. Sleep eluded her. She kept thinking of Heather and Earth, of the crystal she had left behind, hoping it would never glow red. She spent hours reviewing her recordings of Earth, watching human faces, their expressions so open and readable compared to Astrian stillness. She had not realized how much she had changed until she was home and found herself alien among her own kind. On the 7th day, she was summoned back to the council chamber. All 3 councils were present, the atmosphere tense. We have reached a decision, the High Elder said. The anomaly in Earth's sun will be corrected. Relief flooded through Lyra, almost making her dizzy, but the Elder continued. However, your proposal for cultural exchange has been rejected. The correction will be made covertly. Humans will not know of our intervention or existence. Lyra felt a sharp disappointment. But before she could speak, Counselor Vex added, You will not return to Earth. Your memories of direct contact will be archived for study but isolated from general knowledge. Your actions, while well-intentioned, have been deemed potentially destabilizing to both societies. No, Lyra said, the word echoing in the chamber. This is a mistake. We have much to learn from them. The council has decided, the elder said firmly. This meeting is concluded. Lyra stood frozen as the council members filed out, leaving her alone in the vast chamber. Her mission had partially succeeded. Earth would be saved. But the greater opportunity would be lost, and she would never see Heather again. Or would she? As she returned to her quarters, a plan began forming in her mind. She still had access to her ship, still had the coordinates for Earth. The council's decision was wrong. She was certain of it. They had not experienced what she had. They could not understand. For the first time in her long life, Lyra considered defying the council. It went against everything she had been taught, against the very structure of Astrian society. But Earth had shown her that rules should serve life, not the other way around. That night, she slipped into the archives, copying her mission data. She visited the engineering level, requisitioning supplies for what she claimed was a sanctioned research project. She programmed her ship for a covert departure, one that would avoid the main sensor arrays. As the twin moons of Astria rose, casting silver light across the crystal spires, Lyra made her choice. She would return to Earth not as an official envoy, but as a refugee bringing warning and knowledge. Her people would correct the solar anomaly, but they would also monitor Earth more closely now. Perhaps even consider it a threat due to her actions. She needed to warn Heather, explain what had happened, help prepare humanity for possible future contact. And if she was honest with herself, there was another reason too. Something she had discovered on Earth. Something Astrians had forgotten long ago, the capacity to care for another, being more than for abstract principles. The strange human emotion they called friendship, and perhaps something more than friendship, something she was still coming to understand as her ship silently lifted off. Bypassing the main control systems, Lyra looked back at the gleaming perfection of her world and felt no regret. She had found something more valuable than perfection on a small blue planet circling an unstable yellow star. She set course for Earth, for Heather, for a future neither of their worlds had imagined. The integration of an alien into small-town life proved both easier and more difficult than either of them had anticipated. Lyra learned human mannerisms quickly, adjusting her speech patterns to match local expressions, mastering the subtle body language that humans used unconsciously. Her disguise technology worked flawlessly, allowing her to appear human whenever they ventured into town. Heather introduced her as Lily Morgan, a research scientist and old college friend who needed a place to stay while working on a special project. The town of Millfield was small enough that newcomers were noticed, but large enough that they weren't automatically suspicious, particularly when the newcomer was friends with Heather Mason, the librarian, who had lived there all her life. They created a background for Lily, forged documents using technology from Lyra's ship, established an online presence with carefully backdated social media accounts. Within a month, Lily Morgan existed on paper and in pixels as thoroughly as any human. What proved more challenging was the cultural adjustment. Lyra struggled with human customs that had no logical basis. The greeting rituals, the social taboos, the unwritten rules that everyone seemed to know instinctively. She asked endless questions: why humans said thank you for things they were entitled to, why they engaged in small talk when they could communicate efficiently, why they valued privacy, yet shared personal details with strangers online. I find humans beautifully contradictory, she told Heather one evening as they walked along the river that ran behind the farmhouse. On Astria, contradiction is seen as failure of logic. Here it seems to be the essence of your species. Heather laughed. We're complicated, I guess, she said, kicking at fallen leaves. We don't make much sense sometimes. That is precisely what makes you interesting, Lyra replied. Your unpredictability. Their plan to gradually introduce advanced technology began taking shape. Lyra, using her knowledge of materials science, designed more efficient solar cells. Heather helped her connect with a professor at the state university who was impressed by Lily's revolutionary approach. They submitted papers to scientific journals, applications for patents, careful not to make the advances seem too dramatic. A steady progression that could be explained by human innovation rather than alien intervention. At night, when the disguise came off and Lyra was herself again, they would sit on the porch or by the fire talking about the differences between their worlds. Lyra explaining the history of Astria, how her people had gradually engineered emotion out of their existence in pursuit of perfect efficiency. We believed feelings were inefficient. Distractions, she explained. They caused conflict. Delayed decision-making led to irrational choices. So over generations we modified ourselves, reduced the capacity for emotion, increased logical processing. And now, Heather asked quietly, now we have perfect societies with no joy. No wonder, no passion. Lyra looked into the fire, her eyes reflecting the dancing flames. We solved all our problems except the one that mattered most: how to make existence worthwhile. During the day, Lily Morgan became known in Millfield as the quiet scientist who helped at the library sometimes. A bit odd, perhaps too literal and formal, but kind. The children especially liked her. She never talked down to them, answered their questions about science with fascinating detail, and seemed genuinely interested in their opinions. She volunteered at the school science fair, causing a stir with her demonstrations of principles most teachers barely understood. Heather watched this integration with pride and growing affection, seeing Lyra navigate human society, learning, adapting, finding her place. It was like watching a complex and beautiful dance. Sometimes there were missteps, awkward moments when Lyra's alienness showed through. But increasingly there were triumphs small, victories of understanding and connection. As months passed, their partnership deepened. Their shared secret created an intimacy that transcended ordinary friendship. They depended on each other, Heather providing cultural guidance, social context, the human perspective. Lyra offering knowledge insights, a view of existence that spanned worlds, yet beneath this developing life ran an undercurrent of anxiety. They both knew that somewhere beyond the sky, Lyra's people were watching, monitoring Earth, perhaps monitoring Lyra herself. Every unusual weather pattern, every satellite malfunction, every unexplained light in the sky made them wonder, is that them? Are they coming? Lyra had brought monitoring equipment of her own, using it to scan for Astrian technology signatures. Each night she checked for signs that her people had increased their surveillance or worse, sent someone to find her. The crystal remained clear, indicating no immediate threat to Earth. But that didn't mean they were safe. Their fears materialized on a wintry Tuesday evening. Snow was falling softly outside. Heather was grading papers from her new position, teaching at the community college. Lyra, now working as a research consultant, was analyzing data on her tablet when her equipment began beeping urgently. "What's wrong?" Heather asked. Looking up, Lyra was already moving, checking readings. Her expression grave. "Astrian energy signature," she said. "It's close. Very close." "How close?" Lyra looked at her. "In orbit around Earth," and she paused. "Its configuration matches a scout ship." Heather felt her stomach tighten. "Scout?" As in searching, Lyra nodded. "They must have tracked my ship," she said, her voice steady but with an undercurrent of tension. "Or perhaps they detected my technology. Usage, it's difficult to hide completely." "What do we do?" Heather asked, standing up automatically, looking around as if expecting intruders. Lyra was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she said, "We prepare. My people prefer observation to intervention. But if they have sent a scout, they are looking for something. Likely me." For the next several hours they worked quickly, methodically. Lyra hiding her most advanced technology, burying some devices in the field, disguising others as ordinary human objects. She showed Heather how to use a small communication device. "If we are separated, if something happens to me, use this," she instructed. "It will connect to my ship, allow you to activate certain protocols." Heather took the device. It looked like an ordinary pendant. "But what could happen to you?" she asked. "What would they do?" Lyra hesitated. "For defying the council, for bringing technology to Earth, for establishing unauthorized contact. The penalties are severe." Heather felt cold fear grip her heart. "Would they kill you?" "No," Lyra said. "But they might take me back. Force memory extraction, reprogramming. It would be." Her voice faltered. "Like death in some ways." They stayed awake that night, watching the skies, monitoring Lyra's equipment. The scout ship remained in orbit, making no move to land, but its presence was a clear message. They knew Lyra was on Earth and they were looking for her. By morning, they had a plan. Lyra would need to move her ship, currently camouflaged in the field behind Heather's house. It was too obvious a target. The energy signature too easy to track. She would relocate it to the mountain 70 miles away, hiding it in a remote canyon. While there, she would set up additional monitoring equipment, create a secondary base. Go with you," Heather insisted as Lyra prepared to leave. Lyra shook her head gently. "No. You need to maintain our cover here. Your absence would be noticed," and she hesitated. "We should not be together if they come. It gives them two targets instead of one." The logic was sound, but Heather hated it. The thought of Lyra facing Astrian scouts alone was terrifying, but she knew Lyra was right. One of them needed to maintain their normal routine, prevent suspicion in town. Lyra left that night under cover of darkness, promising to return in 3 days. She took minimal equipment, her ship cloaked and silent, rising into the night sky on a trajectory designed to avoid detection. Heather watched until she could see nothing but stars, then went back inside, to the suddenly empty house. The next 3 days were the longest of Heather's life. She went to work, taught her classes, helped patrons at the library, maintained a facade of normalcy, while inside she was consumed with worry. Every car that drove past, the farmhouse, every helicopter overhead, every unexpected noise made her tense. Every time her phone rang, she expected bad news, or worse, no news at all. Lyra simply gone, taken by her people. On the third night, as Heather sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket against the cold, watching the road, the familiar hum of Lyra's small personal transport made her jump to her feet. A wave of relief washed over her as the vehicle uncloaked, revealing Lyra tired but safe. "Did you do it?" Heather asked as they went inside. "Is the ship secure?" Lyra nodded. "It is well hidden. The mountain location provides natural shielding from sensors, and I have established emergency protocols." She looked at Heather, her expression serious. "The scout ship is still in orbit, but it has been joined by another." Heather's relief evaporated. Two ships. Lyra set up her equipment on the kitchen table. "This one is larger, more powerful." She brought up a holographic display showing the orbit patterns. "It appears to be a research vessel. Is that good or bad?" Lyra considered. "It suggests they are still in information-gathering mode, not enforcement or military action. Yet it also indicates escalating interest." They sat at the table looking at the glowing representation of the Australian ships, circling their world. 2 points of light representing an unknown future. Potential threat. Potential opportunity. Something neither of them could predict. "What happens now?" Heather asked. "We continue our work," Lyra said, turning off the display. "We introduce the technologies we planned. We build our life here." She reached across the table, taking Heather's hand, and we watch, we prepare, we adapt. The sky turned purple as Heather Mason looked through her telescope toward the strange light hovering above the wheat fields behind her house. She blinked twice, not believing what she saw. The light grew bigger and brighter until it descended slowly, landing with only a soft hum. Heather had always been curious about space and aliens, but never thought she would meet one. She approached the light cautiously, her heart racing with each step. As she got closer, she could make out a shape inside the glowing sphere. It looked almost human, but not quite. The sphere opened and out stepped a tall woman with blue skin, silver hair, and eyes that seemed to change color with every blink. She wore a simple white bodysuit that seemed to flow like water. Her name was Lyra, though Heather would learn that later. Heather stood frozen, not sure if she should run away or say hello. But before she could decide, Lyra spoke in perfect English. "My ship detected high intelligence on this planet I came to study." She paused, looking at Heather with curious eyes. "You are different from what our records show." Heather found her voice. "I think you're the different one here," she said with a nervous laugh. "Where are you from?" Lyra pointed to a star barely visible in the darkening sky. "My home is there. What you call HD 40307. My people have watched your planet for many cycles. We find humans fascinating yet primitive." Heather should have been offended, but she was too amazed. Instead, she invited Lyra to her home, which the alien accepted with graceful nod. Over the next few days, Heather showed Lyra human life. Books, music, food, art. All the things that made humanity special. Lyra absorbed everything, asking questions that made Heather think differently about her own world. "Why do humans create art when it serves no survival purpose?" Lyra asked as they looked at paintings in a local gallery. "Because it helps us feel alive," Heather explained. "It connects us to each other and to something bigger than ourselves." Lyra seemed confused at first, but then she touched a painting gently. Something changed in her eyes. Lyra shared knowledge about her world too. Her people were advanced with technology humans could only dream of. They had solved hunger, disease, even death. But something was missing. They had lost creativity, emotion, connection. Their society was efficient but cold. One night as they sat under the stars, Lyra revealed the truth. "I was sent to determine if humans were worth saving. Your son will experience an anomaly in 50 of your years. It will destroy this planet unless we help." Heather felt her blood run cold. "Why would you save us?" "Because my people need you as much as you need us." Lyra said, "We have forgotten how to feel, how to create, how to love. We believed these things made a species weak. Now I see they make you strong." The next morning, Lyra took Heather to her ship, showing her technology beyond imagination. She explained that her mission had changed. She would return to her world, not just with data, but with stories, art, music. She would show her people that humanity deserved to live, that they had something precious to teach. But there was more to Lyra's mission than she initially revealed. Her people, the Astrians, were divided. The Science Council wanted to study humans from afar, while the Military Council saw Earth as a potential threat to be neutralized. Lyra belonged to a smaller third faction, the Cultural Exchange, who believed in learning from other species. "I am taking a great risk by making direct contact," Lyra admitted to Heather. "My superiors wanted observation only, but I sensed something special about this planet, about you." Heather felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. "What happens if your military decides we're dangerous?" Lyra looked away, her silver hair shimmering in the moonlight. "They have powerful weapons capable of altering your son's output. They would make it look like a natural disaster." Heather shivered, despite the warm night. "We need to show them we're not a threat," No, Lyra corrected. "We need to show them you're worth knowing, that your creativity and emotion are valuable, not dangerous." They spent the next weeks preparing. Heather introduced Lyra to more humans carefully, at first friends. She trusted who would understand the importance of this alien contact. Each meeting strengthened Lyra's case. The musicians who moved her to tears with their melodies. The chefs whose food awakened senses long dormant in her species. The children whose innocent questions and boundless imagination made her laugh for the first time. Lyra recorded everything, taking samples of art, music, literature, dance. She was particularly fascinated by human relationships. The concept of friendship was foreign to her people, who functioned more like parts of a collective mind than individuals. The idea of falling in love was entirely alien, yet strangely compelling. When Lyra spoke of her home, Heather tried to imagine it, a planet of gleaming cities where no one got sick or grew old, where machines did all work, where every problem had been solved except for the emptiness that grew inside each person. "They sound lonely," Heather said one evening as they watched the sunset. Lyra nodded. "We are efficient, but our efficiency has cost us our soul." She touched Heather's hand gently, her skin cool and smooth. "You have shown me what we have lost," as the time for Lyra's departure drew near. Tension grew between them. Heather worried about what would happen when Lyra presented her findings. Would the Astrians choose to help Earth or destroy it? Would they see value in human emotion or dismiss it as primitive weakness? The night before she was scheduled to leave, Lyra and Heather sat on the roof of Heather's small farmhouse, gazing at the stars. "What will you tell them?" Heather asked softly. "The truth," Lyra replied. "That humans are young and flawed and sometimes destructive, but also beautiful, creative, passionate, that you make art and music for no reason but joy, that you love deeply, that you dream, that I have learned more from you than you have from me." Heather felt tears in her eyes. "Will they listen?" Lyra was silent for a long moment. "I do not know, but I will make them hear." She took something from her pocket, a small crystal that glowed with inner light. "I want you to have this." "What is it?" Heather asked, taking the strange object. "A communicator." Lyra explained. "If I succeed, I will contact you. If I fail—" She paused. "It will warn you. The crystal will turn red if my people decide against Earth. You will have time, perhaps a year, to prepare, though I do not know what you could do against such power." Heather clutched the crystal tightly. "I hope it never turns red." "So do I," Lyra whispered. The next day, at dawn, they stood in the wheat field where they had first met, Lyra's ship humming softly behind them, ready for departure. "I never thought aliens would be real," Heather said with a sad smile. "And now I can't imagine my life without knowing you." Lyra touched Heather's face, her changing eyes reflecting complex emotions. "I will return if I can," she promised. "Whether with good news or to warn you, I will not abandon this world, or you." With those words, she turned and entered her ship. The sphere closed. around her glowing brighter and brighter until Heather had to shield her eyes. When she looked again, the ship was gone, leaving only a flattened circle in the wheat. Heather stood alone in the field, the alien crystal warm in her palm. She did not know what would happen next, but she knew her life and possibly all of humanity had changed forever. The fate of Earth now rested in the hands of one alien woman who had learned to see beauty in what her people considered primitive. And somewhere, far beyond the stars, Lyra began her journey home, carrying with her the essence of humanity, ready to fight for a world not her own. 6 months had passed since Lyra left Earth. The crystal she had given Heather remained clear, showing no sign of danger, but it also showed no sign of Lyra herself. Heather kept it close, always in her pocket or on her nightstand, watching for any change. Life had returned to normal, or what passed for normal after meeting an alien. Heather went back to her job as a rural librarian, cataloging books, recommending novels to children and elderly readers, hosting the occasional poetry reading. But everything felt different now. The stars at night were no longer distant and abstract, but filled with possibility and perhaps danger. She found herself looking up more often, wondering where exactly HD 4307 was, and whether Lyra was there. Thinking of Earth, Heather had told only a few trusted friends about her encounter. Most believed she was creating an elaborate science fiction story. She let them think that it was easier than trying to convince them. And what proof did she have besides the crystal, which appeared to most people as just an unusual paperweight on a cool autumn evening? Heather was walking home from the library, taking the path through the wheat fields, now golden and ready for harvest. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, when she noticed a faint humming in the air. She froze, recognizing the sound. Her heart began racing as she scanned the darkening sky. There above the old oak tree, a small light growing larger. She broke into a run, heading toward it, hope and anxiety battling within her. The ship that landed was smaller than before, barely larger than a car. Its design was similar, though sleeker, more streamlined. The sphere opened and Lyra stepped out. Her silver hair was longer, now tied back from her face. Her eyes still changed colors in the fading light. But there was something different about her expression, a tension that hadn't been there before. Heather stopped a few feet away, suddenly uncertain. "You came back?" she said. Simply. Lyra nodded. The crystal remained clear. "Yes, your son will be stabilized. My people agreed to that much." Heather heard the qualification in her voice, but Lyra took a deep breath, a very human gesture. There will be no official contact, no cultural exchange. They want to save Earth, but not interact with humanity. She paused, looking directly at Heather. "And I've been forbidden to return here. Yet here you are," Heather said, taking a step closer. Lyra smiled faintly. "I am no longer following orders." The implications of that statement hung in the air between them. Lyra had defied her people, had risked everything to return. She was no longer an observer or an envoy. She was something else entirely. "I need to warn you," Lyra said, becoming serious again. "My people will continue to watch Earth more closely now. Some on the military council see humans as a potential threat. They will be looking for signs of aggressive expansion." "And Heather?" She hesitated. "They know about you. About our contact." Heather felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. "Will they come for me?" "Not directly," Lyra assured her. "They prefer indirect action observation, rather than intervention. But your knowledge makes you," her voice faltered, "unusual. Liability." Heather, finished for her, or an asset depending on your perspective. Lyra nodded. "That is why I returned to warn you." And she looked away for a moment, because I could not stay away. The admission hung between them, simple yet profound. Heather felt something shift inside her, a realization that had been building for months. Whatever had grown between them transcended species and worlds. It was something neither of them had words for yet. "Come inside," Heather said, gesturing toward her farmhouse. "It's not safe to talk in the open." Lyra's ship camouflaged itself, fading into the landscape as they walked toward the house. Once inside, Heather made tea, a habit Lyra had enjoyed during her previous visit. They sat at the kitchen table, the warm yellow light, making Lyra's blue skin glow softly. "What happens now?" Heather asked. Lyra wrapped her long fingers around the mug, drawing comfort from its warmth. "I cannot return to Astria, not after defying the council. I am effectively exiled." She looked up, meeting Heather's gaze. "I came here hoping." Understanding dawned on Heather. "You need somewhere to stay more than that," Lyra said quietly. "I need a purpose. My life as I knew it is over. I am neither Estrian nor human now. I belong nowhere, and everywhere." Heather reached across the table, taking Lyra's hand. "You belong here if you want to." The offer was spontaneous, but Heather meant it. She had spent 6 months thinking about Lyra, wondering if she would ever see her again. Now she was here, real and solid, and needing help, but it won't be easy. Heather continued thoughtfully. "You can't exactly walk down Main Street looking like." Her gesture encompassed Lyra's decidedly non-human appearance. Lyra smiled for the first time since her arrival. "I have technology that can help with that." She touched a small device at her wrist and her appearance shimmered. Her blue skin became pale pink, her silver hair darkened to blonde, her changing eyes settled into a steady blue. Her features remained similar, but now she could pass for human, at least at a casual glance. Heather gasped. "It's like a disguise, a biological projection." Lyra explained. "It won't fool sensors or cameras, but to human eyes I appear human." She deactivated it. "Returning to her true form I would only use it when necessary. I prefer to be myself with you." That night they talked for hours. Lyra explained more about her people's decision, about the risks they both faced. Heather shared what had happened during the 6-month separation, how she had kept their secret, how she had missed Lyra. As the night deepened, their conversation turned to the future. "I have knowledge," Lyra said. "Technology, information, science, far beyond Earth, current level. You want to share it?" Heather guessed. Carefully, Lyra nodded. "Some of it would benefit humanity, medicine, clean energy, communication. But other knowledge could be dangerous in the wrong hands. I need to be selective." Heather considered this. "You could be a consultant, a scientist with breakthrough ideas. No one would need to know where those ideas really came from." They began to form a plan. Lyra would adopt a human identity, using her disguise technology. She would work with Heather to gradually introduce advanced concepts in ways that would help humanity, without revealing her true origins. They would have to be careful, always watching for signs that Lyra's people were taking a more active interest in Earth. "It won't be easy," Heather warned. "We have to build you a complete identity, records, paperwork, history. All the things humans accumulate over a lifetime." Lyra smiled. "I have studied human systems. They are complex but not impenetrable. And I have brought tools that will help." She gestured to her ship, now hidden somewhere in the field. As dawn approached, they moved to the porch, watching as the stars faded and the sky lightened. Heather felt simultaneously exhausted and more awake than she had ever been. Her life had just transformed completely again. And yet it felt right sitting next to this woman, from another world, planning their shared future. "Do you regret it?" Heather asked suddenly, coming back. "Giving up your world?" Lyra was quiet for a moment. "My world gave up its soul long ago," she said finally. "I was looking for something without knowing what it was." She turned to Heather. "Something you call meaning, purpose, connection. The things that make life more than just existence." The sun crested the horizon, sending golden light across the wheat fields. Birds began to sing in the nearby trees. "The everyday miracle of morning on Earth, I am afraid," Lyra admitted in the growing light. "Afraid of being discovered. Afraid of failing you. Afraid of losing this new path I have chosen." Heather took her hand, feeling the slight coolness of her skin, the different texture. "I'm afraid too," she said. "But maybe that's good. Fear means we have something worth protecting. Something that matters." Lyra squeezed her hand gently. "A very human concept. But I think I understand it now." As the sun rose higher, they went inside to sleep, Lyra in the spare bedroom, Heather in her own. Both both knowing that everything had changed, that they stood at the beginning of something unprecedented, a partnership between two worlds, two individuals from vastly different civilizations, united by shared purpose and growing affection. Outside the farmhouse, the morning continued. Birds called, insects hummed, tractors rumbled in distant fields. The ordinary world unaware that walking among them soon would be an extraordinary visitor, one who had chosen humanity with all its flaws and beauty over the cold perfection of her own kind. And in the vast reaches of space beyond Earth's atmosphere, other eyes were watching, waiting, wondering about the strange anomaly that was Lyra, and what her defection might mean for the careful balance between worlds. Spring arrived, bringing with it a sense of renewal and hope. The Astrian ships remained in orbit but had taken no direct action. Their presence became a constant backdrop to Heather, and Lyra's lives a reminder of the precarious balance they maintained. Lyra's technology continued to make subtle impacts in the human world. Her improved solar cells were being produced by a small startup company. Her water purification system was being tested in drought-affected regions. Her medical scanner, disguised as ordinary human technology, was helping doctors at the county hospital diagnose conditions more accurately. None of these advances seemed impossible, merely ahead of their time. Breakthroughs rather than alien technology. Lily Morgan had become a respected member of the Millfield community. The strange woman who had arrived last year was now Dr. Morgan, consultant and guest lecturer at the university, friend to many, neighbor to all. No one suspected her true nature. Her occasional social awkwardness was attributed to the stereotype of the brilliant scientist too focused on her work to master ordinary interaction. Heather watched this integration with pride and something deeper. Their relationship had evolved beyond friendship, beyond partnership, into something neither had words for. It transcended human categories of affection spanning worlds and species. A connection neither had expected, yet both now cherished. One warm evening, as they sat on the porch swing, watching fireflies dance above the fields, Heather asked a question that had been on her mind. Do you ever regret it? Leaving your world, choosing Earth. Choosing. She hesitated this life. Lyra was quiet for a moment, considering, not from uncertainty, but from the Astrian habit of giving questions their due weight. No, she said finally. I have found something here I never knew existed on Astria. Purpose, meaning, connection. She turned to look at Heather. The ability to choose my own path rather than the one designed for me. And, she added softly, the opportunity to experience emotion. Not just study it, but feel it. The admission hung between them. Lyra had never spoken so directly about her feelings. The Astrian woman who had arrived clinical and detached had transformed, learned to feel, learned to connect. And in that moment, looking at each other in the gathering dusk, something shifted. A threshold crossed without words. Their moment was interrupted by the sudden beeping of Lyra's monitoring equipment. They both tensed. Lyra quickly checked the readings, her expression growing serious. Movement, she said. One of the ships is changing orbit, descending. Heather repeated. Where Lyra manipulated the display, tracking the trajectory, it's moving to low orbit above. The northern hemisphere above. She looked up, her eyes wide. North America. They looked at each other, the implications clear. After months of passive observation, the Astrians were making a move, and it was focused on their location. We need to prepare, Lyra said, rising from the swing. They may be coming for me, or they may simply be conducting closer observation. Either way. They spent the night preparing, gathering emergency supplies, preparing Lyra's transport vehicle for quick departure, downloading critical data. They had discussed this contingency, had plans in place, but the reality of it now was still shocking. By morning, the Astrian ship had stabilized in low Earth orbit directly above their region of the continent. Lyra's instruments detected scanning beams powerful enough to penetrate ordinary structures. They were looking for something or someone. Heather called in sick to work. Lyra canceled her consultations. They waited, watching, monitoring, ready to move if necessary. The day passed. Intense vigilance. Night fell, bringing no change. The ship remained overhead, scanning. It was just after midnight when Lyra's equipment detected a new signature. A smaller craft had detached from the main ship. and it was descending rapidly toward Earth. They're landing, Lyra said, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation, where Lyra checked coordinates. The state park. 10 miles from here, close enough to be deliberate, Heather said. Far enough to avoid direct confrontation, they have found, Lyra said with certainty. We don't know that, Heather argued. They could be taking samples, conducting tests. But even as she spoke the words, she knew Lyra was right. After months of observation, the Astrians had located their missing scientist and they had come for her. What do we do? Heather asked. Lyra stood straight. Her decision made, I will meet them, she said. No, Heather protested. They could force you to return. They could wipe your memories. They could. All true, Lyra acknowledged. But if I hide, they will continue searching. Perhaps expand their efforts, perhaps endanger others. She took Heather's hands in hers. I must face them. Try to explain. Make them understand. They prepared quickly, Lyra gathering specific technology devices that might help her communicate with her people, convince them items that proved her findings about humanity. Heather insisted on coming with her, despite Lyra's concerns. I won't let you face them alone, she said firmly. This concerns both of us. Both our worlds. They took Lyra's transport, a small vehicle capable of silent flight, to the coordinates where the Astrian craft had landed. The state park was closed at night, the forests dark and quiet as they approached. The craft had landed in a clearing, its sleek, silver form reflecting the moonlight. 2 figures stood beside it, tall and still. Lyra landed their transport at the edge of the clearing. She turned to Heather, her expression solemn. Whatever happens, know that my choice to return to Earth, to stay with you, has been the most meaningful decision of my existence. Heather fought back tears. This isn't goodbye, she insisted. We're facing this together. They stepped out of the transport, walking slowly toward the waiting Astrians. As they got closer, Heather could see that while humanoid, the figures were clearly alien, taller than humans with the same blue skin and silver hair as Lyra. Their eyes reflected light differently, their movements too precise, too measured. One of the Astrians stepped forward. I am Observer Terran of the Science Council, Lyra. Former High Observer, you have violated Council directives. Lyra stood straight. I have made a choice based on new information. Information the Council refused to properly consider. The second Astrian spoke Security Overseer Kale, Military Council. You have brought unauthorized technology to a developing world, established unauthorized contact, potentially altered the development path of an entire species. These were clearly accusations, formal charges. Heather realized the Astrians had not come to talk. They had come to judge. I have shared knowledge carefully, responsibly. Lyra replied, to help, not harm, to guide, not dominate. She gestured to Heather. This is Heather Mason, the human I first contacted. She represents what humanity can become with guidance. The Astrians turned their attention to Heather, studying her with unreadable expressions. Observer Terran spoke. You have been contaminated by knowledge beyond your species, development level. Prefer to think of it as being educated, Heather replied, keeping her voice steady. I haven't been contaminated. I've been enlightened. Security Overseer. Kale stepped closer. You cannot understand the implications, the danger. Premature knowledge. Premature. According to whom? Heather interrupted. According to your timeline, your standards. She took a breath, gathering courage. Your people were once like us, weren't they? Before you engineered out emotion, before you chose efficiency over feeling, you must have been creative, chaotic, alive. The Astrians exchanged looks, a subtle communication passing between them. Observer Terran turned back to Lyra. The Council demands your return. All technology must be recovered. All contamination contained. And if I refuse, Lyra asked, then we are authorized to use compulsion. The word hung in the air, ominous. Lyra straightened her posture. Before you attempt that, I request formal evidence presentation. An ancient right. Even the Council cannot deny. The Astrians seemed surprised by this request. Security Overseer Kale spoke. Evidence of what your violations are. Clear. Evidence of humanity's value. Lyra clarified. Evidence that my actions, while against protocol, serve the greater good of both our worlds. There was a long silence broken finally by observer Terran presentation granted, though it will not change the outcome. Lyra activated a device she had brought. A holographic display appeared between them, showing images, data streams, recordings, art, music, scientific breakthroughs, moments of human kindness, courage, creativity. The essence of humanity condensed and presented. I have discovered something our people have forgotten, she said as the images flowed. That efficiency without purpose is empty. That knowledge without feeling is sterile. That existence without connection is not living. She showed them specific examples. Technologies humans had developed not for efficiency, but for joy. Music that served no purpose, but to move the soul, art that existed simply to express what words could not. Human connections that defied logical explanation. Parents sacrificing for children. Strangers helping one another. Lovers choosing each other. Despite all reason. This is what we lost, she said, her voice passionate. This is what I found here. This is why I chose to stay. The Astraeans watched in silence, their expressions unreadable. Then observer Terran spoke. Your evidence is noted but insufficient. The council has determined. He was interrupted by a new sound. A hum different from their ships. More devices appearing around the clearing. More Astraeans stepping from the shadows. Heather felt her heart sink. They had been surrounded all along, but something unexpected was happening. The new arrivals were not moving to capture Lyra. Instead, they formed a circle around them all, some carrying equipment, some simply observing.